This is the E-commerce Edge podcast with your host, Jason Greenwood. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the E-commerce Edge podcast with me, Jason Greenwood, your host. It is my pleasure to welcome another fellow podcaster as well as somebody who is very large, living large in the distribution community. Welcome, Mr. Benj COHEN, to the podcast from Proton AI.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Super excited to be here.
Man, it's super cool to have you along for the ride today. I've been an avid listener of your podcast, In the Mind of a Distributor, and you're doing some super cool work. I love the fact that despite the fact that you're a SaaS platform vendor specifically for the distribution space, that you're giving back, that you're pulling back the curtain, so to speak, on a lot of what's going on in the distribution space and trying to help the industry get better, be smarter, act smarter, treat customers better. And you're not only providing the technology to help make that happen, but you're also, I guess, trying to educate and elevate the community of distributors out there in the industry. Super well done on that.
Thanks, Jason. To be honest with you, it is 100% a selfish pursuit because I love learning from, we get to have amazing people come onto the podcast and then I get to learn from them. So my story, I grew up in my family's dental distribution business. So been in distribution my whole life. And so fascinated by the industry. And then you get to interview someone from Grainger. You get to interview someone who, a couple weeks ago, we launched an episode with the York family. They run a great distribution business selling irrigation supplies, getting to learn about that business. They've been a longtime friend. So it's honestly been an amazing opportunity just to talk to some crazy, smart, and talented people in the industry and learn from them.
I tell you, as somebody who just released their 636th episode of their own podcast, I can attest to the fact that it is one giant learning journey and one giant educational journey. And I, too, love the fact that I get to speak with people that are smarter than me. In most instances, they're talking about things that I'm not necessarily that it's not necessarily my zone of genius where they are. And so being able to learn from the best in the business and being able to speak to people that have a different experience set to you, that is really the true joy of being able to be a podcaster in this space. Now, obviously, we both, it's not our day job, right? It's a side light to what we really do. I'm a consultant, you're a SaaS vendor. I think one of the really interesting things about podcasting is I think it helps us keep our finger on the pulse of our industries in ways that is really difficult to do any other way.
Yes, I definitely agree. I can give you an example. We had Brian Walker, who's the chief product officer at Grainger, who came on the podcast, and he was talking all about how Grainger thinks about merchandising, which is, if you think about Grainger, one of the reasons why they've been such a juggernaut is how excellent they are at merchandising products. And he talked about a lot of the themes that are critical to we just launched an AI-powered product information management solution that's all about helping distributors merchandise their products just like Grainger does. And like all the things he talked about were like a masterclass in how to think about merchandising that we can then apply and help our customers take advantage of. So yeah, it's an amazing way to keep up with how the best are thinking about the game. Yeah.
And how did you come to be in this world? Now, I know you come from a family distribution business, but like, why would you not go into distribution then, for example? Like, how you were in data and marketing at Danaher, and then you just over 8 years ago, you started Proton as a CRM for distribution specifically, and then obviously you've latterly got into more of the PIM space in addition to the CRM because they're intimately connected. But what caused you to want to be more in the tech side of the industry than, say, going and working inside of a massive distribution company like a Grainger?
Yeah, definitely. So I can give you like a little bit of my story, but I think the story for me starts like a couple generations ago. So 1930, my great-grandfather, also named Benjamin Cohen, didn't graduate high school and start selling dental supplies out of a suitcase in Wilkes-Barre, Scranton area, Pennsylvania. And this is, in my opinion, the story really of the American dream, right? This is like a Russian immigrant, a Jew who comes over years before and starts up a business selling dental supplies. My grandfather goes into the business. He grows it. My dad and his uncle go into the business. They grow it. Today, it's the third largest dental distributor in the U.S. We sell all across the U.S., 1,500, 2,000 employees, $1 billion in revenue. It's a pretty significant business. And so I had the chance, so fortunate to get to grow up in that business, coming home every night to the dinner table, my dad talking about all the trials and tribulations of running and growing a distribution business. And so that's how I learned about the space. And then in college, I was studying applied math and data science, and I'd done some internships and stuff at my family business. That's where I honestly fell in love with using data and sales and the whole thing. So I'd done some internships and some work there. Was in college doing some consulting for some manufacturers in the dental space. And honestly, I was thinking I was going to go into the family business. But my dad said, look, you got to go work somewhere else for a couple years before you do. And I had this idea that maybe we could use sales data to help improve. On the one hand, we have all this data about our customers, everything they've ever bought, everything they're browsing online. And on the other hand, we've got all these sales reps that are running around and not having super tailored conversations. I was like, you know what? Maybe there's something I can do with that. So over a Christmas vacation, we were in Mexico City. I remember sitting by the pool with my dad and was telling him that I've been working on some of these different data projects with some manufacturers. And he was like, you should do that for distributors. I said, oh, that's a great idea. He's much smarter than I am. He put it together in a way that I didn't see at the time. I was still in college and started the company there. The idea was if I could build a software platform that worked for my family business, them as the first customer, we could scale it across other distributors. We could build something bigger and better than we could build internally if I just did it at my family business. And it would be a real opportunity for me to learn more about the industry, the whole thing, and be able to bring best practices. And so that's how I ended up on the software side instead of going into a distribution business. Was really the opportunity to build something that could help more than just my family business, the opportunity to leverage the advantage of growing up in the distribution world and bringing better software to distributors. Because that's what I always thought distribution deserved, was something better than just taking software from the retail space or whatever and trying to plug it in.
Wow, that's so cool. And when you started to think about what this technology should, could, or would look like, how did you overcome maybe some of the, I don't know, I don't want to say imposter syndrome. Certainly, you weren't the first CRM out there. Certainly, you weren't the first CRM aimed at wholesale distribution. But you had the Salesforces of the world that were already starting to verticalize their software and tailor it for specific situations. You had other technologies out there that were either part of ERPs, because oftentimes in distribution, the CRM module is part of their ERP system, whether it's a NetSuite or whether it's a D365 or whatever it is that they're using in distribution. And so where was the, I guess let's call it the unique gap where you said, hey, cool, there's lots of systems out there. There's lots of CRMs out there. There's lots of ERPs out there, but I don't feel like what is out there today uniquely fits the needs of distribution. And I think we can build something
totally
better.
I think there's two levels to this question and sort of the insight. So the first is, what's my experience when I go and travel with a sales rep? And at my family business, that's a huge part of our culture, is everyone from the CEO all the way down, you have got to get in the car with a sales rep multiple times a year, because as a distributor, we're a sales business. And the only way to understand what the hell is going on is to get in the passenger seat of a car with a rep and go make sales calls. That's sort of baked into my DNA. And I went out on some sales calls and I saw firsthand what's happening, which is like in dental, we're selling to dentists and we're showing up delivering donuts. First of all, the irony of that is not lost on me. But also, like, surely there's a better way to do this. Like, we have all this data. We do $1 billion of sales a year. We got hundreds of millions of transactions, and we're showing up saying, hey, we're like one of 3 dental distributors. Do you want to buy anything? So I sort of, my firsthand experience was there's got to be a better way to do this using all the data that we have. So I saw at my family business, hey, this is, the current state is not where it needs to be. And it's not like my family business is a laggard, not investing in technology, the whole thing. It's a big business. They're spending a lot of money on IT and they haven't figured out the right software. So that's one part. And the second part is when looking at the market landscape, and this was certainly true at the time, and I think it's probably still true today. You go on Salesforce's website, they have a whole set of verticals. Manufacturing is the vertical they call, like if you call Salesforce and say, I'm a distributor, I'm looking for your vertical solution, they'll connect you with the manufacturing salesperson. Now that's great. Like from a 40,000 foot view, manufacturers, they deal with products, distributors, they deal with products, but it's not even close to the same thing. A manufacturer, they make stuff, they have a whole different set of challenges than a distributor. Distributors have way more products, way more transactions, way more customer complexity in terms of the number of customers. My family business has 400,000 products, 30,000 active customers. It's a total, we ship, you want to buy a box of gloves? No problem. We can ship you a single box of gloves. A manufacturer, they're shipping us a container of gloves. It's just a totally different game.
Yeah.
So on the micro level, I saw the problem. And on the macro level, what I felt was the big horizontal players, they don't care about distribution. They bundle it in with people who do physical stuff. And they're mostly focused on bigger markets like healthcare and people who sell software. And their products are really built for that kind of environment. Salesforce, as an example, and I'm picking on it, but all the horizontal CRMs, they're all deal based. Most of a distributor's sales, a lot of our sales are reorders. You're not going to put in an opportunity.
They're account-based,
it's account based. It's
deal-based.
account management. It's a different sales motion. The way you need to we forecast our business selling software using deals in a pipeline. Benco Dental, that sells a box of gloves, does not forecast using a pipeline for the consumables part of the business, which is the majority of the business. So the whole data model doesn't make sense. And then there's the ERP players, and the ERPs are great, and they do everything, and they do everything not as well as it needs to be done.
Okay.
So that was the landscape that I saw, and I said, we could do something better. And we didn't start as a CRM. So we started really on the AI side. How do we help salespeople figure out who to call and what to sell? And this is pre-LLM, so pre-ChatGPT, the whole thing. And then eventually what we found was our customers were really pulling us in saying, what you guys have here is amazing. How do we use this as our full CRM platform? And so that's how we evolved. And we've been following our customers since then to build the platform we have today. But that's what I saw at the time.
And it's so interesting that you say that was the evolution of the software, because I see lots of distribution companies trying to shoehorn HubSpot in, or they're trying to shoehorn Salesforce in, even if they're not a Salesforce shop per se. They, let's say their director of sales or whatever it is, has come from a Salesforce background, and so that's what they know, and so that's what they try to bring into the business. Even vaunted NetSuite, which I love NetSuite as a platform. I think it's a great platform, and I think it's fantastic for wholesale distribution. Being a native cloud platform, amazing product. And I've even deployed their product inside of a retail omnichannel environment, along with their CRM, managing all help desk inquiries and everything else. Great product. But to your point, I think most of these solutions have been so by necessity, they have had to so genericize, I don't even know if that's a word, genericize themselves, that it's very difficult, because they're trying to be so broad in their application. It's really difficult for them to go super deep on any one, either vertical, market, capability set. It's a big ask for someone like a Salesforce to specialize and triple down on wholesale distribution and those needs.
And I think it's important to understand the market dynamics and the market sizing, which is, if you're a Salesforce and you're a $250 billion market cap company, if you want to grow, you've got to go after big markets. And the reality is, for us, distribution is a big market. There's 75,000 distributors to do over. There's a lot of distributors in the US, a lot of distributors internationally. We think for just the CRM market alone for us is $3 billion a year. That's a big market. For Salesforce, they don't care. That's just that's like not a big deal. It doesn't matter. Like, they're not going to win. I think that's part of it. And there's all these specific use cases that distributors need to solve for. I'm a rep in the field. I want to know. The customer says, hey, what did I order 6 months ago? And do you still have it in stock? And if you don't, do you have a substitute? Try getting your Salesforce instance to answer that question for you. It doesn't integrate with the ERP, right? It doesn't understand substitutions. You have to load all the product into HubSpot. Man, it doesn't connect to inventory in real time. Just answering basic questions that sales reps need to know. And so then what ends up happening is the rep has to go to 6 different tools to get the thing. It's, oh my God. We got to build something that works for this industry, that solves the problems that distributors actually have.
And are you seeing one of the other challenges, I think, that the distribution space is seeing right now? There's two things combining together and conspiring together really against distributors. One is, I think there's this evolving expectation of distributors that they are much more tech savvy, that they are much more tech forward. We now know, based on data from Forrester, that over 70% of B2B buyers today are now millennials or Gen Z, which means that they're digital natives, right? So the buying demographic in B2B has changed, right? It skews younger, it skews more diverse. We got more women now than ever before on the buy side distribution. Unfortunately, it feels like in many instances the sell side has not evolved as fast as the buy side. And so we've got traditional salespeople, oftentimes 40, 50, 60, in some cases 70-year-old sales reps who are geniuses in their vertical. They know, like off the top of their head, they could tell you everything about everything in what they sell, literally without having to reference a catalog or anything. They can tell you the specs, they can tell you everything. But the strange dichotomy in that is that they oftentimes are averse to using technology and leveraging technology to improve the way that their workflows function because they perceive it as a threat. And then simultaneously, we have technology now, like yours, that is tailored directly for B2B, manufacturing, distribution, or both, in ways that we couldn't have imagined even 5 years ago. Like even the modern commerce technologies that are either solely aimed at B2B or heavily focused on B2B, like that's all really matured in the last 5 years. And so we have this strange dichotomy where the technology is better than it's ever been specifically for distribution, but yet we have people in the industry, unfortunately, that probably should have aged out a decade ago, but there's no one to replace them yet. And so they've stayed in the industry maybe longer than they even should have. And so they see this technology, which can enable them to have superpowers really in the way that they deal with their customers. How do we start to bridge that gap where when I'm brought in as a consultant, oftentimes to a sales team inside of a distribution company, I'm the devil because they see me as the guy that's going to replace them with the machines. They think I'm the guy that's going to replace them with the robots. It's not that at all. I'm actually a massive advocate for salespeople, but what I'm not a massive advocate of is salespeople doing dumb admin work that adds no value to them or the customer. And so how do you think we start to change the conversation so that salespeople don't feel threatened, that they understand that people like you and me, we actually want to give them superpowers and we actually want to help them sell more and be better and do better and knock on more doors and expand the relationships that they already have instead of doing dumb stuff that the machines should be doing for them.
Yeah, you covered a lot in there. I think there's a couple of themes that I think are worth pulling apart. One is related to like the aging workforce and distribution. This is a huge challenge for a lot of the distributors that we talk to. The challenge is somewhat around getting those people to adopt technology, but also really about, okay, at some point these people are going to retire. How do we replace them with people that are as knowledgeable as what you just described, but haven't been in the industry for such a long time? So I think that's part of it. I think the second part is like, how do you get people to adopt technology that are maybe not like AI native or technology native? The interesting thing that we've seen on that, and I think they're related. I think that at least what we've seen, our work using AI agents has really helped on both fronts. So our approach is we use AI agents to collect all the data we need about products to really train the AI on what you sell. Then we obviously have all of the transaction data, all the customer data, the data from the business in one place. Then we layer AI on top of that. And that's what we provide to the new sellers so that when a customer asks a question about a product, they can have that like instant knowledge that a 70-year-old salesperson who's been selling electronic components for their entire career and has memorized the catalog backwards and forwards knows. So giving them that technology to help those people get up to speed more quickly. And we've seen that we've been able to reduce ramp times of new reps. Like we actually like quantitatively measure this. We can reduce the ramp time by up to 2/3. So that's like a huge relief for companies that have these sort of older salespeople. The second challenge is how do you get the older salespeople on board? We've seen something very interesting happen, which is that 5 years ago, before agents were a thing, you'd have to train these people on how to use a new piece of software. And the software has more and more features all the time. Like it gets more and more complicated. And often people are like, dude, I do my job right now. I don't need this. And this is freaking complicated. That sort of like complexity curve has started to go in the opposite direction with agents. So what we're seeing is you can interact with our software and never click any buttons. Like you can talk to it the whole time. So you're a rep in your car driving from one customer to the next. You just say, hey, I'm about to go visit this customer. Tell me what's going on with them. Are they up? Are they down? I have a specific question about a thing they bought 2 years ago. Tell me about that. the AI will just go and do what the rep would have been trained to do in the software, but just do it itself. And then it just gives the rep an answer. And so what we're seeing is actually really good adoption for these AI agents with these older, less tech forward salespeople because they know what to ask. It's just too much of a pain in the ass to go in and get an answer to that specific question in the software itself. And so we're seeing that change. I think probably the third thing I would say is where we've really seen this go right is when all the incentives are aligned. So when people try to do commerce, and you're closer to this than I am, or people try to automate manual tasks, we have this order entry, quote entry automation piece. So we're automating manual work, trying to free people up. People get sensitive if it's you're taking my money, but if you actually pay commission on all the sales, it's a win,
Doesn't
right? I
matter.
mean, like my family business, we do, I think 80 or 90% of our sales are digital. And if it's your customer and they buy something online, those are your commission dollars. So you actually want them to buy stuff online. And if they do, that's freeing you up to go spend more time selling more stuff and making more money. And so where we've seen things go right is when all the incentives are aligned. Where we've seen things go wrong is when, and I say this with love as a cheap distributor myself, sometimes we think, we're going to be cheap. We're going to save a little bit of money and we're not going to pay commission on the stuff people buy online because the rep didn't do anything. So we're not, this is like a disaster and it does not work. So the incentive piece we've seen be important. I'm curious if that lines up with what you've seen.
100%. And I am such an advocate of, I tell the distribution companies that I work with, and especially if they're doing e-commerce for the first time, maybe they've historically done EDI, maybe they've done punch out, maybe they've done some form of digital channel sales in the past, maybe they've even tendered for work that required an EDI integration of some variety, but maybe they've never had a portalized self-service e-commerce experience before. Maybe they're doing that for the very first time. And so they will come to me and they'll say, Jason, how should we roll this out across the sales team? How should we get them on board? How should we get buy-in? How should we try to help them onboard their customers into the system, sit alongside their customers for the first 1, 2, 3 orders, help them use the new system, help smooth the onboarding process of these clients? And I said, what Jason Hein is famous for saying, you get what you incentivize. Yep. Sales reps are coin operated. The reality is you are 100% correct. And I actually say, look, you want instantaneous adoption by your reps and their customers, then add additional incentives for orders that come through digital sales channels. If you think you're going to gain 20% of efficiency in the business by bringing customers on digitally, but both from acquisition all the way through replenishment, share. And I tell you, you're going to get them on board. Whereas I've seen just the opposite be the case, where reps will scuttle effectively a digital project. A distributor might spend $1, $2, $3, $400,000 on this shiny new piece of technology, and then it never sees the light of day. It never gets adoption. And when I dig under the bonnet of why adoption rates are so low, and it's the industry average is 9%. Okay, that's the industry average in distribution. Yep. So that's Deloitte data, and that's from 2025. So that's current data. So average penetration of distributors that have an e-commerce self-service portal, only about 9% of revenue migrates into digital channels. So we have a problem with adoption in our industry. In many cases, it's because the technology is not fit for purpose and it doesn't create a good experience. But in many cases, it's specifically because the reps will block that with their customers. And they'll tell their customer, oh, don't use that new website. It's hard to use, and it's not going to protect your inventory for you like I would. Just email me if you need something. Just Slack me. Just WhatsApp me, whatever, and I can make sure and get whatever you need. So the sales reps are ingenious at making sure that sales go down the channel that will put the most money in their pocket. And so if you don't align incentives, you're going to have major problems of adoption.
Yeah. I also think that the part of what I feel like there's a framing around what you said that's like the sales reps are blocking. I think that's part of it. I also think like the sales rep ultimately wants the best thing for the customer. And so if we're not getting the e-commerce adoption that we need, I think sometimes you have to look inward and say, is the customer experience really the best is the customer experience where it needs to be able to drive adoption? Anyone who shopped on Grainger's website, the merchandising of those products is unbelievable. The same is true with McMaster. Both have very high relative to their industry digital adoption. And part of the reason is it's really easy to find stuff. I'll tell you a story. A couple years ago, I broke a caster wheel on my parents' coffee table. They were very upset about it. And I thought, this is the perfect time to be a mystery shopper at some of our customers. So I went online and I tried to buy a caster wheel, which we sell to a lot of industrial distributors, at many of our customers. And I'll tell you, it was almost impossible to find the caster wheel that I needed. Where did I end up buying it from? Grainger. Was it more expensive? Yes. Did I care? No, because I got it and I knew from their website, I found exactly the wheel I was looking for. I knew exactly the specs I cared about. Like, I needed to know the distance between the two screws. Again, I'm not very mechanically inclined, but I had to screw this thing into a coffee table. Maybe the first time I ever used a screwdriver in my life, which is embarrassing. But I had to know the distance between the 2 points. And they had a diagram, that whole thing. At some of our customers, or even Home Depot, I couldn't find that. And even Amazon, it's hard to find because they don't have the right merchandising. So part of this is delivering an amazing commerce experience is really, in my opinion, comes down to the other thing I would say is on this, some of it is the industry, like meeting the customer where they are. Like we see that e-commerce adoption is often tied to who the end customer is and the level of sophistication of the end customer and how that all works. And so like contractors just don't use e-commerce as much because they're driving between different sites or whatever and they're not on their computer. So anyways, I'm curious your take on the merchandising piece because we've seen that be critical.
100%. And I think that luckily, with the combination, and I'm seeing this bifurcation happen in the industry of distribution right now, which is on the one hand, we want to do as much customer research before we go into scoping a new solution as possible. We want to know what their pain points are. We want to know how we can make this as fit for purpose at launch as possible. We don't want to build it mainly for the distributor. We want to build it mainly for their customers so that we do see high adoption at launch. So we create a full adoption plan that goes along with that whole entire solution architecture process and everything. But even in those scenarios, as you rightly point out, there are certain industries, verticals, and customer cohorts that they're never going to log into your portal because they're on the job site or whatever. But the beauty of the emerging consolidation of both conversational and multimodal AI means that now the traditional communication channels in B2B e-commerce, so email,
Can
Slack,
be
WhatsApp,
digitized.
Teams, SMS, can be turned into effectively headless commerce channels. Now, that is probably the most exciting evolution in the B2B commerce space in the last 25 years, in my opinion, because now we can strip off, if somebody says a customer sends an email with a PO attached to it, to their rep, we can strip that off. We can map that into the commerce system as if they logged in to the commerce system and place that order through the portal. If they make a quote request, if they make an RMA request, if they want to check inventory, pricing, any of that stuff, we can treat those communication channels now as headless commerce channels with a combination of multimodal and conversational AI. And so that means that humans are still in the loop, but we can offload a tremendous amount of that manual human workload. So before, pre-multimodal AI, we had certain technology that was okay at this. It wasn't great. For example, we had OCR that could scan PDFs and it could do certain things. It could turn it into a digital file that could then be mapped into an ERP, but it wasn't great. AI has completely changed the game in this regard. And so you have platforms like Motivate. You potentially had Justin on your pod, I'm not sure, but like those guys are doing some truly amazing stuff with Salesforce automation, not Salesforce the platform, Salesforce the function. And so it is such an exciting time to be in this space. And I think that you are the poster child, or your technology is the poster child for how transformative AI can be in a distribution context. And I have one very specific question. So do you remember pre-COVID how, especially in distribution, it would have been odd if a sales rep was on a Zoom call with a client? It was considered odd at that time if you had an AI note taker join the call. So people would say, "Oh, can you kick the note taker off? That's a little creepy, right?" But then post COVID and during COVID, it became completely normalized. Like because everybody had to be on 50 Zoom calls a day, we all had to use AI note takers because we couldn't keep up with the volume of stuff we were trying to track out of phone calls on our own. We'd miss a note. And so we wanted to focus on the person on the other end of the call instead of focusing on taking notes. And so AI note takers just were totally normalized. how long do you think it's going to be before an AI pendant for sales reps is going to become completely normalized in person to where I don't have to take notes or have my iPad out when I'm talking to one of my distribution customers, and then automatically that is in real time connected to my CRM. And so all the action points, all the information, it's all transcribed. The transcript, everything goes into the CRM. Everything's booked, everything's scheduled, maybe even a draft order placed via, or at least a quote request placed in the CRM. I see a future where that becomes completely normalized like AI note taker.
Oh yeah, 100%. You're starting to see this in other in-person sales markets, right? So like people selling to like homeowners and stuff that are going door to door. There are a couple of companies that have grown really quickly in those markets, basically doing what Gong does for software companies, joining calls, recording, whatever. And I think it'll be slower in distribution than in those other markets, but there's no question. Recording the transcript, once you have the transcript of a call, the things you can do with that now with AI are unbelievable. We built internal tools that leverage all of our call recordings to automate follow-up, automate prep. We use it in marketing to understand, if you want to figure out how to position a product, you want to understand how the customer talks about it in their own words. We have every call we've ever had with a customer recorded. So we can, if you leverage the AI tools correctly, like you can get answers to those questions. I totally think that's where it's going. That's where we see things going. And that's why we're so focused on making sure that we have the agent layer on top of all the data that we have, and then adding additional sort of ways to get data into the system. So totally agree. You got to be able to match that call data up with the ERP data, with the product data, with the opportunity data, with the note data. Like you got to be able to, the email data, you got to be able to build that sort of full picture. And so that's what we're building towards. And I agree. That's definitely where it's going.
Yeah, it's an exciting world, and it feels like we do have generational collision happening. But I think the first time, even if it's a 60-year-old sales rep in the field and their ride-along partner, as you described before, their 25-year-old fresh-faced out of uni, got the business degree, comes out, goes on a ride-along to a customer, and maybe a 60-year-old senior rep doesn't wear an AI pendant or doesn't take their phone out with an app on it to do the recording that's integrated with CRM, but the younger person does. I think the first time that senior rep sees that in action, and just seamlessly the younger rep in the conversation with the customer, hey, do you mind if I just record this conversation so I don't miss anything, and so that I take all the information back to the office and do everything that I'm supposed to do, make sure and do the follow-up correctly? Do you mind if I just record our conversation? And when it becomes such a seamless part of that talk track, so to speak, I think once a more senior agent sees that for the first time and sees the level of automation that can fall off the back of that, I think the adoption rate is going to skyrocket of that type of technology. That would be my take.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's all about just like how much value can you add with that additional data. And 3 years ago, it was like helpful because you could review someone's calls and go back and watch a call to see what happened if you were the rep who was on the call. Now the use cases are way more powerful. We're using it for forecasting. Like we ask our internal AI agents that we've built, hey, what's our forecast for Q1? Go look at all the deals we have, go and look at the call, see what's going on, read the emails. And I'm able to get a forecast in 20 minutes without lifting a finger using this kind of technology. And yeah, there's the more value it provides once it's out there, the more the adoption is going to follow. And I think, at least in our view, if you want to be able to truly automate the busy work, you need all this context in one system. So you talked about emails turning into orders. That's a feature of our CRM, but really doing that well requires more than just the context of the email and the product data. Having the full context of that customer, everything we've ever talked to them about, everything they've ever bought, having that all in one place is key to truly being able to automate that manual work. And honestly, if you think about what we're building versus there are other companies that do order entry automation, that's really what makes it different from those other companies. Is everyone's using the same underlying AI. It's really about what's your context graph, your understanding of the customer and understanding of the context of that interaction. That's something that we think we do uniquely well. And so I think that's really what's going to drive, in my view, what's going to ultimately drive adoption for this is really being able to provide that extra level of value.
Yeah, I think even things like abandoned carts or draft orders that are in situ in a system, and then they call up their rep or they email their rep because they wanted to check a spec or there wasn't an exploded drawing on the website like there should have been. And so they need to check something before they actually finalize the order. I think you're right. Having a centralized pool of data from every source, I see this very much as the modern B2B analog to what happened in the retail e-commerce space in the convergence of search, merchant personalization. So going back even 10 years ago, there were three very distinctive technologies. So you had enterprise site search, you had enterprise merchandising, product recommendations, Boost, Berry, all that sort of stuff. And then you had different types of personalization, whether that was email personalization, etc. So you had three almost distinct practices in a business, and you had three very distinct technology stacks, and it was very complex and difficult to integrate those three pieces of technology because they needed to share data with each other to provide the
Yep.
best experience. But there was a lot of custom API integration required to make that happen. Now, most search platforms have brought in merchandising capability, they brought in personalization capability, and vice versa. You even take a company like Nosto, they originally were just a personalization platform, and then they bought an enterprise search company because they saw, oh, geez, we actually need to cross-pollinate this data, and it's very useful to create a seamless customer experience across all of our digital touch points that way, and we can inject personalization into emails with recommendation blocks, etc. And so I feel like that same process is starting to happen to a lesser degree in B2B, where, you know, there's not a single email marketing automation CDP type platform out there in the market that is targeted at B2B right now. So I feel like a platform like yours has the best shot at getting there because in the retail e-commerce world, if you're using Klaviyo or something like that, you are marketing to an individual, a single human being with a single email address. So it becomes relatively easy to track profile properties, order history, abandoned carts, all that sort of stuff, and then personalize on a one-to-one basis. But when you need to personalize at the account level in terms of total emails sent, the types of roles within the organization, and the segmentation of the emails that you need to send to each of those people within those roles. Like it's a totally different kettle of fish to personalize marketing automation at the account level versus the individual level. So I think we're not quite there yet from a technical standpoint in B2B, but it feels like we're rapidly heading in that direction.
Yeah, and I think the thing about B2B that's a little bit different is so much of it, it's really about understanding sort of the taxonomy or the ontology of the thing and that really is the difference. So on the product side, sort of commerce, personalization, search, one of the things that one of the insights we've had is that's great. We do personalization for commerce sites. That's one of the offerings that's part of our platform. But one of the insights over the last couple of years is personalization's great, but really what the B2B buyer needs is a sensible ontology, sensible merchandising, not merchandising in the B2B, in the B2C sense is like this dress kind of looks like this other dress. So we should recommend them together.
Yes.
This bag goes with this dress. What matters for our customers is more like what I described around searching for that caster wheel. It's when I go
Yep.
to your site, I can understand the ontology of how these products relate to each other. And you've done the hard work of understanding how the products all fit together so that it's easy for me to find what I'm looking for and get to what I need. So that's on the product side. The same insight is true about customers, right? And that's why this sort of context graph that understands the account and maps as closely to the real life version of what's happening matters, right? Which is, hey, I'm about to go visit this factory. This is a food manufacturing plant. They have these departments. They have these roles. So having a CRM system, whatever you want to call it, that sort of understands the ontology of that customer is key to being able to deliver the personalization experience that the B2B customer actually needs. And it's just different. And again, this is not something I realized when I started the business, but as I've gotten more into distribution, this insight about having a data model, having a data structure that maps to the reality of the products and customers is key to being able to deliver the experience you're talking about.
And I think one other key distinction that I think many B2B technology vendors maybe haven't even realized themselves is that in the B2C and D2C world, most personalization is effectively wisdom of the crowd personalization. Okay, cool. The person that visited this product page visits this product page, added this to their cart, also bought this thing. So we're gonna recommend it, right? And so it's very much wisdom of the crowd. What did the masses do? So therefore, that's likely what the next group of masses are going to do, and we're gonna act accordingly. We're gonna send them down a buyer's path that makes sense in that context. In the B2B world, personalization looks way different. It looks more like restricted and custom catalogs. It looks more like custom price lists. It looks more like CPQ type of experience, a quote-based experience. It's a job-based experience. It's a if I'm working in the automotive distribution space, it is okay, and I'm serving fleets, then it looks a whole lot more, okay, what is my fleet of vehicles and what are the items in my catalog that work for this customer's specific fleet of vehicles. And so I think personalization in the B2B world, to your point, is so very different to that generic wisdom of the crowd personalization in the B2C world, that if we're not catering specifically for the types of personalization that our customers operating in our vertical expect, then we're probably missing out on a massive sales opportunity.
Yeah, 100%. We see this with all of our customers. So I'll give you an example of some sort of contrasting types of personalization that can be offered. A common recommendation in the B2C world would be like, this item goes with this item, a dress goes with a purse, whatever. The analogous thing in B2B, at least what we've seen with our more project-driven customers, is I'm an HVAC contractor. It's Saturday afternoon. I'm checking out on your site. I've got 6 things in my cart to do a job. Like, I got to go install this unit on someone's like house or roof or whatever. Using the data that we have, we can tell you what else you need to complete that job. That is a different task than a purse that goes with a dress because it looks the same or it's the same color. It's really about what is the job to be done and using AI to solve that. And we've seen that particular use case. We work with some of the largest HVAC distributors in the US. We've been able to grow their commerce order sizes by 7, 8, 9% in some cases, literally like in the billions of dollars of revenue using this kind of technique, which is a B2B specific type of personalization, which is not necessarily personalized to that customer. On some level it is, but it's really about that customer's trying to do a job. How do we help them do their job better? And the more we can do, that comes back to having an ontology of the products, understanding the products well, understanding the customer set well. And that's really the opportunity for AI, in my opinion.
Couldn't agree more, and I think we could spend another hour talking about the Proton PIM and how that came about and how that links into the customer experience and customer journey in the Proton CRM, but we'll save that for another conversation. If you could, as we slowly start to come down to the end of our time together, if you could sprinkle fairy dust on the wholesale distribution industry and change one thing, anything about it at like the snap of your fingers, what would it be?
Oh, that's a good question. I think if I could snap my fingers, I would turn up the risk tolerance a tiny bit. And what I mean by that is AI right now is smarter, at least than me. I'm not that smart of a guy. The models are way smarter than I am. And if I give them the right context and set them up in the right way, they can do things that I can't do. And if you set up the right stack of models, so not just LLMs, but also traditional machine learning, the right data, the whole thing, you can really do amazing things. And I think the thing that sort of scares me or gives me pause about the future, and honestly, in some ways is the biggest opportunity for distributors, is just taking a little bit more of a risk to actually let the AI do its thing. So I'll give you an example with a customer, and then I'll give you an example internally. So we have this AI PIM that goes out and collects the perfect record of every item. I'll be honest with you. It's better than a person today. It's smarter. It gets it right. Every time a customer has said, hey, I'm not sure that's right, the customer's been wrong. With love and respect. It's just smarter. It's just better at doing that job than a person is today. But we have customers that, and I think we're going to get there, but people are reviewing these things, every single one by hand. And that's going to be a blocker. If you have 100,000 or millions of items, you're never going to be able to realize the benefit of this kind of technology. The same challenge exists in my business, right? We've got 40, 50 software engineers. They're building stuff all the time. 2 years ago, you could use AI to autocorrect or finish off the sentence. And the leap we've had to go through is to turn up our risk tolerance a little bit and say, we're going to write code. We're not going to review every line. We're going to have AI write the code. We're going to have AI review the code. we're going to have AI test the code, and it's a little bit more of a risk, but we're able to go 5 times faster as a result. And I think in order for distributors to get the benefit of AI, we've got to take that leap as an industry. And so that would be the thing I would change.
Man, that's gold. That is, you've put that in terms that just really so resonate with me as somebody who's trying to help these companies adopt technology at scale, especially AI technology at scale. That so resonates with me. Look, I'll drop a link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes and to the Proton website in the show notes. Other than that, if people want to reach out to you and they want to have a conversation about Proton or about distribution, the industry, where it's going, tech, what's the best way to get a hold
definitely. Find me on LinkedIn, Benj Cohen, or check out our website, Proton AI. And I think my email's listed, benj.cohen@proton.ai. Reach out. Always happy to chat about this stuff. We're all about helping distributors maximize their use of AI and grow faster. So would love to have more of a conversation if folks are interested.
I love that. I love that. Now, as we do finish and put a big red bow around our time together, this is where I get to flip the script. I get to hand the microphone over to you. I get to let you ask me one question, any question that you like. It could be personal or professional. Mr. Benj Cohen from Proton AI. What is your question?
Honestly, I would love to flip back to you the magic fairy dust question. You're obviously closer to the commerce side, the implementation. What do you want people to change, or what would you change?
Yeah, I think it would be the sensitivity to the perceived threat inside a lot of manufacturing and distribution businesses, particularly in the sales team, but not just in the sales team. It bleeds into customer service. It bleeds into leadership. It bleeds over into lots of areas in the business. Is that I have to spend quite a bit of my time when I'm first starting to work with these large distributors in particular, putting that risk conversation to bed and saying, look, I'm here to give you superpowers. I'm not here to take your job. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm here. I love salespeople. I love customer service teams. I love everything about what you guys do and the special sauce that is in your head. In some cases, 10, 20, 30 years worth of experience in an industry like that stuff I have deep and abiding respect for. But what I struggle to have respect for is a aversion to tech just for tech's sake. There's sometimes an aversion to tech just because it's new, just because it's scary, just because it's intimidating, just because, oh my God, I got to learn this new thing. And so I like you, I think that AI is starting to help bridge that gap in new ways to make it easier to adopt a new technology without having to have this super steep learning curve. And so I think if we collectively, as people who work on the tech side of the industry, if we can start to, and I think podcasts like ours start to break down those barriers. They start to break down those walls. And it's a lot of why I started this podcast, was to make the tech and ops side of commerce more open, more transparent, more open kimono. I wouldn't say, I don't want to use the term dumb it down, but make it more accessible to a broader audience. That was my whole goal. Because when I started my podcast years ago, there was no one focusing on the tech and ops side of commerce. Lots of merchant stories, lots of marketing stories, and lots of marketing tech talk, but not a lot of hardcore back office tech and ops talk. And so I think we're starting to break down those barriers. So that would be my goal, is that we can lower the perceived threat of technology in our industry and say, look, we're here to help. We're not here to replace. We're here to augment. We're here to give you superpowers. I want my clients, when they meet me, to feel like they won the lottery. And I'm sure you feel
100%. Yeah, I love it. That's good.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for your time. We definitely have to do this soon because we got
so much to talk about.
It was so fun, man. You're such an awesome speaker. I really appreciate
you
too.
Your time. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.